Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. اللهم لك الحمد حتى ترضى ولك الحمد إذا رضيت ولك الحمد بعد الرضا ولك الحمد حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه. اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. It is a pleasure for me to be speaking to you. Istanbul is a city that's very dear to my heart, and all of those who are here either visiting or you are from Turkey, thank you very much for being here, and thank you very much for being. It's a blessing for you to be a part of this city and for us to be here and to be talking about this blessed topic. I believe that Palestine is an issue not only for the Ummah, but I believe Gaza is protecting Islam today. And that's what I want to talk about, how Gaza saves Islam. But before I do that, I will say something about ummatics. Ummatics is really very easy to talk about when thinking about Palestine, thinking about Palestine, because the feeling that Palestine inspires in us, no matter where we are, is that feeling that we all belong to this one body. We belong to one ummah. And as the Prophet ﷺ said, مثل المؤمنين كمثل الجسد الواحد إذا اشتكى منه عضو تداعى له سائر الجسد من السهر والحمى. That believers are one body. When one part hurts, the entire body responds with sleepless nights and with fever. And we should think of Palestine as not just any part, but it's very close to the heart of the Ummah. And we know this from the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There is a mutawatir hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam about a ta'ifa mansura. I'm not going to go into detail, but the Prophet said, until the end of time, there will be a group of people that will adhere to the truth. No matter what the rest of the world does, they will not sway from the truth, and they will not be harmed by لا يضرهم من خذلهم ولا من خالفهم. They will not be harmed by anyone who, and this is the interesting part, the hadith Sahih says, they will not be harmed by those who betray them, خذلهم ولا من خالفهم, nor those who oppose them. It is as if the Prophet ﷺ is reading what's going to happen in 2023, 2024, because betrayal, he mentions betrayal, khadal, before he mentions opposition. Because the harm that comes within Muslims and to Muslims when we betray each other. And khuzlan is not just a regular kind of betrayal, it's actually a smaller form of betrayal, which is when you abandon your brother or your sister. You don't help them the way you should. Right? There is a higher kind of betrayal when you actively go and oppose and make deals with the enemy. And my point is that in this hadith, which is mutawatir, many of the Sahaba speak about this hadith, relate this hadith. In one narration of the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ is asked, where will these people be? And he said, Baytul Maqdis wa aknafi Baytul Maqdis. They will be in the Baytul Maqdis and the surrounding area of Baytul Maqdis. So it is as if the Prophet ﷺ is prophesying about people of Palestine and Gaza today. Of course, when it comes to the issue of the prophecies of the Prophet ﷺ, understanding them requires wisdom. And so I'm not going to go into that. But if you look at the world today, especially if you look at the history of colonial world and post-colonial world, Palestine and the pain of Palestine has kept the Ummah alive and prevented it from going to sleep in a way that no other issue has. And of course, I come from Pakistan and I grew up with the pain of Kashmir in my heart, always thinking, I was born in Pakistan, raised in Saudi, and I've been living for the last 28 years in the United States. But Kashmir has been very dear to my heart. So the fact that I talk about Palestine, there is a different register, a different place for Palestine. Why? Because it is the third holy sacred shrine for us. It's Al-Quds. And the first of the Qiblas, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made this the first Qibla. It is as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is affirming the importance of this land, this place, before it was the land of Muslims, before it became part of Darul Islam, before Muslims conquered it. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded that Muslims pray toward it. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raised the Prophet alayhi salam to the seventh heaven, to Mi'raj, the first step of Mi'raj was Al-Isra, which is night journey to Bayt al-Maqdis. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have raised him from Mecca, but it was a great symbolic gesture, like a symbolic act, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first took him to Bayt al-Maqdis. So Bayt al-Maqdis is not like any other place. If it were not a sacred place, it would still be our obligation to help. It will still be our obligation to stand with our people. According to the fuqaha, all of the ulama, if all of the schools agree that when Muslims are attacked in one place, then it becomes an obligation on the ummah to help them, and the immediate obligation falls on those who immediately surround the land that is being attacked. And if they are not sufficient, then those who surround them, until the entire ummah, if the attack cannot be prevented, then the entire ummah, it's an obligation to defend them. This is an agreed upon position of all ulama and all the madhahib. And this would be the case if Muslims, if this was not the third sacred place. Imagine, if you want to understand what this is, think about if Medina Munawwara, if the city of the Prophet ﷺ was under attack, if it was surrounded by the kuffar, what would we do? Would we really act differently than what we are acting today? Are we so? Has the ummah reached a point where it is unable to protect its sanctities and its pride? That's why when I talk about ummatics and talk about Palestine, it is as if I'm talking about the same thing, because no other land in Islam, historically, not just today, but historically, has been so tied to the power and glory and strength of the ummah as this land. When Muslims conquered Bayt al-Maqdis, they were at their height. And when Muslims were divided in the medieval period, it was for 87 years under Christian rule, until there was a revival of Deen, and starting with Nuruddin Zanki and then Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, it was retaken by Muslims. And this land, therefore, especially if you look at the history of the last few decades, it is the one thing that has prevented, particularly the Arabs, from completely forgetting that there used to be one people under the Ottomans, of course, and before that, in various other, under the Mamluks and the Seljuks and so on. Palestine is one thing that stands very as an open wound that prevents nationalism from seeping in and settling. And in that sense, I see that as a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I don't see it, of course, people often use the word tragedy. And of course, when you have now more than 10,000 innocent believers, people, Muslims, our people have been killed, of which 4,000 plus children, innocent people, that is an incomprehensible number that we should never allow to be harmed. We should never abandon. What we're doing is khudlan. But yet, despite that, this is not a tragedy. It's not a tragedy because if you look at how they're dying and how they're fighting, it becomes clear that it is they who are winning. And it is those who were selling out, who were compromising their cause, they are the ones that are losing. And that's the final thing I will say, that Palestine, in a way, Palestine saves Islam today. It is they who are reminding the Arabs and the rest of the Muslim world that they must be united. Now, of course, there is Kashmir and there is the Rohingya, and then there is 200 million Indian Muslims, and all of them. It's really remarkable to see that their hearts are with Palestine. And I was just talking to a Kashmiri, an activist and a young writer, who was saying that his mother, who has been in Kashmiri prison in occupied Indian Kashmir for nearly 20 years, they were arrested while protesting for Palestine in Kashmir. But this was that even while they are themselves in the most densely militarized area in the world, they were protesting for Palestine. And many Kashmiris that I talked to there, they believe that what is happening, the courage and strength of people when they are being bombarded, they do not give up. When their children die, they do not give up. They hold each other, they protect, and they are fighting back with such incredible iman that the oppressed Muslims and the non-oppressed Muslims everywhere are finding our iman. And I'm sure this is also something well known to you, so I will simply repeat what I find to be a really remarkable sign, as an ayah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Many young Americans are converting to Islam because they are following on television and especially on social media what the Palestinians are doing. And they cannot understand how you can suffer so much pain, death, right? There are people whose entire family dies, 20, 30 members of your family, everything that you love is gone in a moment, and they say, Al-Qudsu lana. A child is dragged out of rubble, and the first thing that the child says, we will never leave. We will never abandon Al-Quds. And they're fighting for Al-Quds, and they make it very clear that this is Al-Quds that they're fighting for, right? And I can go into the detail of the atrocities of Israel, but that's not the important point. For me, look, if you go and look at the two populations that are living, there is the settler colonial existence of the colonizer Zionist country. If you look at it, I used to show this to my class in the United States. you will find that the part of Israel, right? It looks like you are looking at an aerial picture of Beverly Hills in California, the most expensive strip of California. Nearly every house has a swimming pool, and it looks like, extremely manicured, extremely expensive, extremely luxurious. And then you have people who are living effectively in open air prison. And for some 2 years, I think 2021 and 22, Israelis controlled not only the borders of Gaza and the airspace, but even the amount of food that went into Gaza. They counted the calories so that they will allow only minimal amount of calories that was necessary to live for that many people. Minimal amount of calories. They did that for 2 years, and then they got tired, and now they have shut off everything. So my point is that this is the worst place. It is worse than an open air prison, because any prison in the world has more rights. And every year, every Ramadan, in fact, they bomb Gaza, and they have a word for it in Hebrew, they call it mowing the lawn. They mow the lawn by killing young Palestinians, and that's why majority of the population there is young, because you cannot grow up to a mature age, or the likelihood is low. Despite all of that, Gaza is winning. When these people, if you look at their life stories, if you talk to them, they get married, they have aqiqah, they tell stories that are full of life, full of kindness. Anybody who goes there, whether to the West Bank or Gaza, finds that they're won over by the warmth and life that they find among Palestinians. And they say that, even Palestinians in America, many in my own city, say that you miss the life and warmth that you have in Gaza, because here, when we come to America, we are lost in luxury. We have, cell phones and cars, and you're watching this and watching that. And when you go there, people have only Allah. They remember Allah, and when they remember death, like, it doesn't make sense to us. So if you look at demographic trends, Israelis, despite living in effectively the most luxurious part of the world, where they use up all the water, and they do not allow sometimes any water to Gaza, and yet the first sight of trouble, they run away. Because they're not from there, they run away. The Europeans. And the Palestinians, again, I go back to, they have strong families, and they have, when the death is done, they pray janazah, and they go back to being fully human beings. And Jews or Americans, many of my American graduate students or friends, when they visit Gaza or Palestine, they are won over in no time, because the human index, you talk to an Israeli, he is afraid and full of hate and full of rage. You talk to Palestinians, they're full of faith and full of life and full of warmth. How does it happen that people who have been abandoned by their own brothers and sisters, their own people, the leaders all around the world, they have the whole world to give? And you talk to the people who are being helped by the rest of the world, they can commit a genocide and the world will support them still. And yet they are angry. They're not angry they're angry at the world. And they are unsafe. They are unsafe in America, where they control so much, but they feel unsafe in America. That is why people are converting to Islam, because they say, this is not possible. They have something that I want. So you find many young Americans who are watching these videos, and they're starting Quran reading clubs with tens and tens of thousands of people. And that's why when I say Gaza is saving Islam, I mean it. It is an ayah from the ayat of Allah. It's a sign from the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that true power comes from Allah. It does not come from the United States. It does not come from missiles. It doesn't come from weapons. It doesn't come from their nuclear weapons. It doesn't come from the world. And it reminds me of the hadith in Sahih Muslim that if the entire world comes together and decides to benefit you, it cannot do so except what Allah permits. And if the entire world comes together and decides to harm you, it cannot harm you except by what Allah permits. And that is what you're seeing in Palestine. And that's why I believe Palestine is the beating heart of the Ummah. It's the beating heart of Islam. And it is a reminder for us, right, of where true power comes from. Jazakumullah khairan. I will now yield floor to the distinguished my friend and professor Khairudeen al-Junaid.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah rabbil alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursaleen wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. A quick disclaimer, I'm supposed to be here to listen to my good professor here, Anjum, and I'm always an admirer of his works. We've known each other for some time, but he has pulled me up to the stage, and this is an issue that I have been following for many years of my life. What I want to do is basically to talk about four things in relation to what Professor Anjum has mentioned just now. The first is on history. The second is on the issue of meanings. The third is on the issue of the demands. And I want to begin first with the history. We need to understand when we look at the issue of Gaza, of Palestine, it doesn't begin with 7th of October, as the media wants us to believe. It doesn't begin with 1948, during the start of the Nakba. The story of Palestine, if you follow the book by Noor Masalha, I encourage you to buy the book by Professor Noor Masalha, Palestine, a 4,000-year history, that the Palestinians have been around, and this has been proven in the light of this war, that they are the original people of the place in which they are in. And historically, the land of Palestine, the land where Imam Shafi'i was born, is a land of struggle, even before the coming of Islam. And that's why, as Professor Anjum has mentioned it very, very handsomely, that if you look at the people of Palestine, in as much as they are sad because of the deaths of their family, I have friends from Gaza, 3 of them actually, who's living now outside Gaza. Their sadness is always, in a sense, complemented by a sense of serenity, because they understand, unlike most of us, that there is humanly time and there is divinely time. Humanly time is short. Today you are the victors, tomorrow you are the losers. And if you look at it from the divinely time, if you do things from the perspective of faith, you will always win. And this is something that we need to understand. The collective mentality of the Palestinians that has been around for 4,000 years, and Islam basically fortified it. Palestine historically is a site of courage and a site of ultimate courage. You cannot see, and my friend who's now in Germany from Gaza says that the most courageous people in Palestine are the women folk, he says. He said when he wanted to leave Palestine to study with me at the School of Oriental and African Studies in London, his wife didn't want to go, because the women of Palestine, especially the women of Gaza, are the people who are the most fearless women on earth. And we need to register this. The second is the issue of meanings. What is the meaning of Palestine? What is the meaning of Jerusalem, of Gaza? One of the things that we can derive from this conflict, and in fact in the history of Palestine, is that it is a site of tolerance. Even with all of these clashes that you are seeing right now, it is a site of beautiful tolerance, the tolerance of pain. People are going through extreme pain now, but they can tolerate that pain. If you look at the videos that are circulating about children, young people, as their houses have been bombed, they are reading the Quran. Have you seen these videos? And just reading the Quran, smiling. So they can tolerate every single test that Allah gives them. And they truly understand what the Prophet say, that when man yuridillahu bihi khairan yusib minhu, when Allah wants something good for you, He will give you affliction. And they understand the meaning of this affliction. It is the only way one can get the highest place in heaven from Allah. So it is a space of tolerance, not only the tolerance of pain, of test, but the tolerance between Muslims and non-Muslims. Before 1948, before the Nakba, every right-thinking Jewish, Christian, Muslim that you speak to, who now we know are still alive in their 90s, have registered the fact that all of these communities lived in good tolerance with one another as neighbors. And for us Muslims, we want Palestine to return to that original condition that they were in. Before the rise of Islamic Spain, the convivencia, as we say it, Palestine was the site of tolerance of religions, of ideologies, of ways of living. So this is the second thing, the meanings. And it is important for us to register this meaning, because the young people that I speak to, wherever I go, they are filled with anger and hate. And we need to be very, very careful because of these issues that are now out there in the social media. We need to balance between our anger, our emotion, and our reason. And Islam always teaches us that even if you are in a condition that you are injured or you are treated badly by anyone against you, you must maintain your composure. You must maintain the reason that you have and deal with any form of injury, of hate, of intolerance in the most beautiful way as you can. So that's the second thing. The last to take from what Professor Anjum has said is the demand. So the history, the meanings, and the demands. What is this issue about Palestine demanding from us? What is it? What is the demands that is coming out from this whole issue? It is basically a test, a station of our faith. We are now being asked by Allah, what is actually the depth of your faith? Do you believe that not me, Allah, can do something? Because right now, yes, a lot of people are coming into Islam, but there is also a lot of despair, a lot of sadness. In Singapore, where I come from, and even in Malaysia, where I'm working right now, a lot of people are suffering from mental issues because they are always online every day looking at these videos. They're not coping, they're not sleeping, and they are affected by it. It is a test of our faith, and we need to return back to the Quran and to the Sunnah. وَلَا تَحِنُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ إِن كُنْتُمْ مُؤْمِنِينَ. We shouldn't be sad and we shouldn't feel weak. This is not a time to be in states of sadness. Yes, we are sad for the people who have died, but this is a test of our faith to understand that there are a lot of things that we can do. Man ra'a minkum munkaran fayughayyiru biyadi. Fa in lam yastati' fa bi lisani, fa in lam yastati' fa bi qalbi, wa dhalika adhaful iman. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that whoever sees something that is wrong, an evil deed, one should stop it with your hand. So if you have the power, you should do something about this Palestinian issue, but we don't have the power. So what do? Then you stop it with your lisan. If you can share facts on the ground, if you can share news items that can illuminate our understanding of the issue, this is what we should do. Because the battle now is the battle of narratives. Who tells the right story wins. And at the end of the day, as you can see in the social media, the truths are coming out. The truths about the faith of our leaders, the truth about the faith of our people. All of these are being put out, and that وَذَلِكَ أَضْعَفُ الْإِيمَانِ. And if your heart doesn't feel for these people who are dying, it shows the station of faith that you are in, that we have lost our humanity. Because if you look at non-Muslims right now, all over the world, they are very, very not only affected, but they are very vocal about this issue. And why are they vocal? Because they realize this is not an issue of Muslims. This is not an issue of a particular faith. This is not only an issue of race. This is an issue of the loss of humanity by a given group against another group, and that we must do something, the little that we can, through the force of reason, through the management of emotion, to help the people of Palestine. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So if you allow me, I've been asked to just remind people of what the Maddox Institute is, and for all of you who are here who may not have heard about this before, the Maddox Institute is an institute established in the United States, but it's a global institute to bring together Muslim scholars, Muslim academic, Muslim leaders, and future leaders and future scholars together to think about and work for an ummah, a unified ummah. And by that we mean unified not only in an emotional sense and sentimental sense, as we must be, but also institutionally, economically, socially. And social is a really important part, because if we cannot tolerate each other, if we cannot exchange ideas, if we cannot speak to each other, if we cannot connect to each other, if we cannot give each other protection and refuge when it's needed, then we cannot be one ummah. So Maddox Institute is established for the purpose of bringing together scholars from all over the world, especially the Muslim world, to empower them to work toward that. We have both Muslim, in fact, we have even non-Muslim scholars who agree with the idea, with the mission that the unified Muslim world or an Islamic civilization as a pole in a multipolar world would be the best way to bring peace. So we have, political scientists, we have social scientists, we have Sharia scholars, political theorists, international relations scholars, all working with us. If you have any interest in this project, please reach out to, if you're in here in Istanbul, reach out to Ahsan, and some of you are here, Ilham. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer as well.
Yeah, we can have questions before this person. You can have a question.
So, Jazakumullah khairan for the beautiful talk. Allah reward you for the program together. One of the things that you see that often happens is, as soon as, for example, the bombing stops, the unity of the ummah disappears. Right? This has been the case forever. And recently, what happened at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the breaking of the windows and everything that happened, we saw again all the Muslims came together, and then once it stopped, everything, the unity stopped. Yeah. So, what are some of the meaning? Perhaps Omatic is one of the answers. What can we do to make that unity permanent?
Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam teaches us, right, that all believers are one, like one body. But he did not stop there. He established Medina. In Medina, he established mu'akhat between Ansar and Muhajir. And then he said, right, he teaches, and of course the Quran says that there are rights that are legally established. So the Sharia is established for that reason, is to protect on all of the Shara'i of Islam, the 5 pillars of Islam, right? They're all collective, they're communal. And that's why, to put it briefly, the sentiment has to be institutionalized. This is the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And you're absolutely right. Ummatics is one answer to that. Ummatics is not the only answer, meaning that those of you who are teaching the Quran and learning the Quran, those who are teaching and learning fiqh, those of you who are mothers raising children, who are thinking about the ummah, who are thinking about the sunnah of Rasulullah, you're all contributing, right? So long as you are teaching through Islam, learning Islam, and you're doing so in a way that opens up to the ummah. So to me, for instance, my ummatic training came when my mother would read poems to me or lullabies about Palestine. To me, that's my first school. That's the most important thing. So ummatics is an intellectual institute, but we recognize that the real work happens everywhere in the masajid, in the Quran schools. If you're learning tajweed to recite Quran beautifully, you are doing work that is ummatic. But there are times when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala imposes specific duties of solidarity that we have to know what they are and we have to act on them. One final thing I will say, because I work with Palestinian activists and ulama all the time, they always say this. The rest of the ummah, you're far away, but there are three things that you can always do for us. Number one is dua. And dua is not easy because it requires, it's okay to just say something but if to actually make dua requires that you learn about what's happening, you feel about it, and you make sincere dua. So that's number one, make dua. Number two, boycott BDS. It really, really, really matters. And the ulama are saying, the leaders of the Palestinian resistance, they say that it matters so much more than you think. Because these people really care about money in a way that you cannot understand. As a believer, you may not understand how much they care about their stock prices. And their people leave Israel in droves when their stocks go down and when things are bad. So it's more powerful than you think. And number three, share correct and verifiable information, but share with your friends and your relatives what you know. In other words, do not stop caring about it and sharing about it. So those are the three things I can remember. I'm sure that all of you have other reflections and things that we can do. So please.
Thank you very much. Nice. We're gathering for Ummah. It's very nice to have scholars and they're talking about Islam and stuff. I have been listening about this situation that have brought us to this situation that we are feel weak and stuff. I learned from one scholar, Muslim scholar, who graduated from MIT. He said the three main issues are mawarid and like resources and permissions and also knowledge. Now we are imprisoned by governments controlling those three stuffs. So we are now, for example, most Muslims now, even in America, even in Pakistan, even anywhere, we are tied by taxes. Governments take more money than is allowed in Islam and make Muslims poor so they can't participate much in just causes. That's one issue we have, like very control from our government, also resources. In Islam, Prophet ﷺ said, free lands were free. You can go and unused land, you can go and build a house, and nobody should ever talk to you. The fourth cause of Islam agree on this one, with this. Now, most lands are also controlled by those governments. In every place, not just in our Arab countries or America, every place. So also people now are forced to work harder than they should just to pay rent and stuff. Most of us living in Istanbul, we know this issue. Lands is made scarce by some legal issues. Also, there is the issue with permissions. Now we can't travel without permissions from somebody. You have to even, if now imagine if the borders were open. Can we would be the situation now in Palestine? It's just the government or in just the cities like it was before. Now they control everybody. You have to put these borders and you always have to get permissions from them to cross. This is the other main issue that we are weak now because we can't unite. We've even here, most people living in Turkey also know about this. Even in America, you are not allowed together. Even in Mecca, you are not allowed together because they have those systems that brought by the West and insert in our system.
No, Jazakallah khair. Everything that you're saying is absolutely correct.
And the money also. Now we can have PayPal, or if you want to buy or anything, use anything in the Muslim world, you have to use their money system, their banks, their PayPal, their Pioneer, all those companies that are supporting Israel. So how we can fix this issue?
Yeah, so how we can fix, I think that we have a long journey, but Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Mecca, in the lowest position when it seemed like it was impossible, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam promised the Sahaba the highest things. Somebody was telling me when I was talking about the Ummah recently on with some scholar, in fact, that why are you showing the Ummah these dreams of impossible things? So that I told him the story of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when the Battle of Khandaq, when they were surrounded by the kuffar, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was a rock that nobody could break, so they asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to come. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam hit the rock thrice, and the third strike it broke. And when he struck, he saw a spark came out, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that he saw in those sparks the palaces of Qaisar and Kisra and Basra. And these were, the Prophet ﷺ was promising that these empires will be theirs. And the hypocrites at that time were angry. They were angry that the Prophet is talking about these great, grand visions when they said, we can't even go out to the bathroom. We're terrified that an arrow will come because we are surrounded and so on. But the Prophet ﷺ showed the believers the highest dreams, the visions, and you need the vision more strongly when it seems like you are at your weakest. And it's the most important thing at this time. Of course, the Muslims knew the Prophet ﷺ, what Allah was promising them, but the Prophet ﷺ would point to it and remind them of it those times. So I think it's having this dream, the vision, is part of your iman. And this is a part of your iman that sometimes we forget when we are learning very important things, whether you're learning fiqh or you're learning aqidah, and sometimes you're worrying about details or disagreeing about details, you forget what it's really about. It's about the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so that's one. All of the things that you said, I agree with them, but we have to work toward them. As a historian, I can tell you Muslims have not always been working for them. We are in some ways in a better state today, better able to communicate with each other. The kind of meeting that is taking place right now, it has not been possible in centuries. Let me repeat that. The kind of meeting that we are having right now, brothers and sisters, people who are coming from all different parts of the world, speaking different languages, all able to talk to each other, and all of us are connected to each other in many ways and able to travel. This has not been possible for a very, very long time. And this window of opportunity that we have is transformative, it's revolutionary, it's in many ways already transforming the world. So do not lose heart, do not think that, yes, these rulers they have our necks, the necks of Muslim Ummah. It's not Israel only or Gaza only that is open air prison. They're trying to turn every Muslim country into an open air prison. But why are they doing that? Why do you think they're working so hard? Because Muslims are rising. Because they're afraid of Muslims. This is a fact. In 1980s, an evangelical American political actor, Patrick Buchanan wrote a book called The Death of the West. And the argument he's making is that Muslims are coming. And then he has an article where he says, Islam, an idea whose time has come. So he died scaring Americans of Islam. And there are many people like that today. If you look at demographic trends, 100 years ago in 1910, then the population of Muslims in America, in the world, was 200 million out of 2 billion people in the world. That means Muslims were 10% of the total world population. Of those 10%, if you look at the number of Muslims that were literate, that had knowledge of sciences, and that could travel, it was probably less than 1%. Now, you know what's the percentage of Muslims in the world?
24%.
24%. And by 2050, it is projected to rise to 30%. So today, 1 in 4 individuals is a Muslim. So you go from 10% to 24% to 30% in 1 century. That is, for a demographic change, it is lightning fast. And if you look at the number of Muslims who can speak global languages, who can speak to each other, it's enormously, it's much like 100 times greater than it was before. The number of Muslims that are able to travel, if you look at many of these colonial struggles, they imported, in Pakistan, for example, in India, they imported a man named Muhammad Ali Jinnah from the from the heart of the empire, from Britain, because he could speak English. Just the ability to speak English was so big. Today, Muslims have some of the leading scientists and scholars, and that's increasing. So my point is that our resources, we're not stagnant in some ways, and that's scary for people, right? So all I'm saying is that don't lose hope. If you look at the big picture, there's a lot there's a lot that's bad. There's a lot against us, but there's a lot going for us. Yeah. Let's ask the sister. I think they have been there's been a hand.
So it's an observation that I want to take your opinion in. For like centuries or like a lot of time, the word jihad have been problematic, not in America, not in European countries, but also in our countries. And I think today in the events that we're living in, a lot of the young people are introduced for the first time of the idea of jihad towards what is happening now in Palestine, the Muqawamah, Hamas, and so on. And what I have observed that I didn't, maybe there are, but I haven't seen a lot of Islamic scholars are addressing jihad, the meanings that also Yusuf have talked about, the meaning of jihad. And I'm not talking about jihad in nafs. We have learned this, mashallah, a lot of time. But I'm talking about the other jihad that we're seeing now. We have a lot of misconception about it. We have, it's a whole book in fiqh, in Imam Bukhari, the jihad al-mar'a, jihad al-rajul, all the jihad ayat. We are now reading the Quran as if, subhanAllah, we're reading it for the first time. Entire surahs are talking about jihad, and we have zero idea about it. Even Muslims, they are afraid of pronouncing the word jihad, and they have a lot of misconception. So, how important is for the ulama now to address this for Muslims? I'm not talking about non-Muslims, but at least the Muslims. I haven't seen any collective movement to raise awareness of this word, because yes, maybe now we cannot fight with our brothers and sisters in Gaza, but what will happen if someday it happens?
Yeah.
What are we going to do? We have no clue.
I agree with you 100%, but at the same time, I also think that, alhamdulillah, even that's changing. And I would also say that this knowledge goes up and down. So, because older than some of you. There was a time in the 80s when actually jihad was very popular. We call historians call the period of 1970s and 80s the awakening of Islam, and the Muslims call it sahwa, because if you look at the number of people that are practicing Islam, in every country almost across the world goes up in the 70s and 80s, especially after 1967. Basically, people turned to Allah because they were fighting in the name of nationalism, and when Arab nationalism failed, people began to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and 1970s, and for other reasons, that wasn't the only reason, there was sahwa and people were talking about jihad. And then 9/11, 2001 happened. 90s were already tough, but that especially, and after 9/11, Islam was changed, or rather silenced, on purpose by design. There were reports by American think tanks of how to change Islam. Like you can go look at like Civil Democratic Islam by Rand. And that was picked up, not so much, America worked on this, American agencies, but governments around the world picked up that rhetoric and worked on that. So I want to just say that, alhamdulillah, there is a lot of khair in the ummah, and the darkness is there, but it's temporary. And alhamdulillah, if you look at the number of books that were written on jihad in the last century, they're tremendous, a very large number. We don't talk about it these days, especially the last 20 years, but it's not been dead. And I believe that learning about the ahkam of jihad, right? Ahkam of jihad is actually extremely empowering. This is something we don't need to wait for another time. It is bab min abwab al-fiqh. This is in the Quran, it is in the Sunnah. You have to learn it. This is part of your deen, right? And but to your point, I was talking to some of the ulama in the United Kingdom. They said that after 9/11, they stopped teaching the bab of not only jihad, but many other abwab in fiqh. So they are only learning ibadat. Just to be safe, and of course, then prevent their government program began to sort of pressure them into this. But and they said to us, that is, professors in the university, when you guys write about jihad, that's the only way we learn about jihad, is we cannot teach our students in jihad about jihad in our classroom, in the madrasa where you're supposed to do fiqh. You're not talking about jihad. So they read those books and they learn. So my point is that there is a problem, but alhamdulillah, there are many ways to address it as well. And the questions are so good. I know I could take all night talk to you, but I'm going to just stop now and give chance to President Khairudeen to say final words.
I think the big issue that the lady over here, our sister here, is asking is about the lack of knowledge on things like this. And because of the lack of knowledge of things like this, people tend to assume that they know. And that has led to the act of folly on a lot of Muslims. So I register this. I think that we do need to come together within Ummatics to see how we can engage with these issues rationally. But I just want to say that every time something happens to Muslims, the word jihad is always thrown as a very, to me, a wholly mistaken concept, right? America has waged war to so many countries for so many decades. Is that a jihad? Well,
of 270 years of America's life, there have been only 16 years of peace.
Exactly. So nobody is complaining about American militarism, or whatever you want to call it, right? And what drives it is not the spirit of jihad, right? It is pure a habit of violence, I would say, which is central to the American society. For someone who has lived just about less than 2 years there, I can see all of this. So I think on our part, especially for the young people here, it is very, very important for you to deepen your knowledge on this, to read and talk to scholars about it, and to have a more fuller conception of the meaning of the word, right? And I think one thing I see that is lacking is this engagement between young people and text. That's one. And young people in understanding context. And last but not least, the engagement between young people and scholars who are, in a sense, qualified to even discuss about such issues. So the problem with this internet world that we are in now is that people seek knowledge from all directions. And when they don't take knowledge from the proper place, they end up assuming about a lot of things and have a wrong idea about these many concepts in Islam. Yeah, thank you.
So I want to say something about this because this is a very sensitive and important topic. Just a couple of days ago, you may have known a very interesting trend went viral in the West, in America in particular, which is Osama bin Laden's letter that was on Guardian's website. It was shared and it went completely viral. And a lot of young people began discussing it, young non-Muslims. Why? Because it lists all the things that have gone wrong and why the violence of 2001 was done. The reason I want to mention it is that you have to be careful. On the one hand, these young non-Muslims are seeing the real violence that their countries and their civilization has inflicted. And they're seeing, because they grew up thinking that this was a monster, right? Absolutely irrational monster who did what it did. And all of a sudden they're seeing what's happening in Palestine and they're seeing the letter and all of a sudden bulbs go. It has happened to my students in classroom when I teach history. So I know it's real. But there is a danger. It's quite possible that this letter or this trend is being created in order to infuse and link, conflate 9/11, the terrorist attacks, to what is happening in Gaza now. So we have to be careful not being carried away by it. So for example, when I was talking to a number of scholars and students, I said, you look at the letter, there are many things that are factual there. There's no doubt about it. It's a very compelling letter. It's truth, many things are truthful. But then in one very important, the key point number F, it says, they killed our civilians, they took our lives, and that's why we will take their lives. And they killed their civilians. That is the key point that's buried in a lot of truth points. Now, this is a point that is explicitly considered haram and explicitly rejected by the ulama of all the schools. That we do not do muthla, we do not destroy the bodies or disrespect the bodies of the dead of our enemy. We do not kill civilians just because they kill civilians. That is a point of fiqh and our deen that was agreed upon. Now, in the heat of in the heat of argument or intentionally, whatever that was, this is a major mistake in that letter. But many of our young people, young Muslims, and I was told by some other people that young Muslims are beginning to see that letter as their guide to action. That is very problematic because many things are true in it, but there are crucial things that go against our fiqh and our agreed upon principles that can be very dangerous, and it can really endanger what is going on in Gaza right now, because Israel is trying very hard to make this conflation that, this is our 9/11. They're saying Gaza is our 9/11. While they are committing a genocide that is by all standards a genocide, they're calling it a terrorist attack against them. So my point is simply that you all have to be aware of this and not be carried away by these trends. You have to investigate. Now.
We can have last question and then we can have dua.
Assalamu alaikum. Wa rahmatullah.
Thank you for the conversation. And I just came like late and busy with something, so I didn't get concepts like this Palestine, Muslim issues. If yes, why? And I want to like share something that I did like 2 weeks ago. I don't know. In the night, someone called me. When I picked the phone, he asked me, "Are you Sulaiman?" I say yes. Have you applied for what you call it? A, no, not visa, like American, what you call it?
Green card.
Green card. I said yes. Why did you apply? I said, why are you asking me? See, we just want to know why do you want to. So I just like try to escape and show him that I'm not here about what he was asking or something like that. So he was saying, "Do you know who I am?" So no, I don't know who you are. I say, "Are you supporting Israel or Palestine?" I say, what is this bullshit question? Just answer. I say, I don't know. Why are you asking me? Who are you? He said to me, "Do you know who I am?" I said, I don't know. Tell me. Say, I'm calling you from American Embassy. I said, so why are you asking me this kind of? I said, no, because we apply for the visa. That's why we want to know you are. So like he understood that I understood that I'm not going to give him what he wants. So he was like, "Do you know who I am? I am I am Joe Biden. I am something like I'm so hungry. I'm about to see that stuff of him." So like he kicked the phone up. After then, I recalled the number. So the number is one of the non-registered like what. So I was shocked. What is this? Why are they like calling people like? That's why when I saw this title, I come to see. So is this issue real for Muslim, or it's just like a political issue or something like that? So that's why I came here, but like I miss a lot of conversation here. So that's why I want to talk with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Palestine is an Islamic issue. That was the point that we made. It's an Islamic issue because every just issue is an Islamic issue. It is an Islamic issue because whenever Muslims are targeted, every Muslim has a duty to support. That's number two. That's number three. It is a holy land for Muslims. So it's an Islamic issue for that reason. And it is a command of our deen that when Muslims, any human being, but particularly when Muslims are attacked, their lives, their property, or their honor is violated, then, and if we can do something about it, it is our obligation to do something about it, to change that. As Professor Khairudeen recited the hadith, مَنْ رَأَى مِنْكُمْ مُنْكَرًا فَلْيُغَيِّرْهُ بِيَدِهِ. If you see something evil, you must change it with your hand. If you're unable, then at least talk about it. If you're unable to do even that, then hate it in your heart. And that's the weakest of Iman. Beyond this, there is no Iman. You cannot be a believer if you do not at least hate it in your heart. No.
Can I add something? Yeah. Let's give the opportunity to somebody else who will conclude.
I just there's a question that is being boggling my mind a little bit in the past month. So, alhamdulillah, we see that there is a big global support for the cause of Palestine. However, we also see that there are many different people of groups who are supporting this cause with different agendas. For example, a very open example from Turkey, socialists are doing protests for Palestine with signs such as long live Socialist Middle East. So I'm wondering if this cause should accept support and wherever it's coming from, because it can be beneficial for the short term in the social media and the narrative life, or we should be more cautious about it.
So I think that right now there is a genocide going on. That's we must do everything, get any support possible. But we Muslims who are supporting our people because it's al-Quds, because they're our brothers, and because they're human beings, we should outnumber socialists. And they're doing something good, and that good may bring them to Islam. We don't know. Doing good. Some of the ulama actually talk about this, that if somebody who is not a believer, if they do something good, that good, their love for the good, their love for justice may bring them to Islam. And that would be their greatest reward for good. So that's always possible. But we should outdo them. It would be a shame for us in Muslim countries if there are people who, and this is very, very, unfortunately, very common. Until recently, I used to complain always. Now I've seen some change, but still there's good reason to complain that my secular students are much more interested in causes of justice than my religious students in America, who all want to be doctors and make money. That's changing, but not fast enough. Muslims should be the first who are standing for Muslim causes anywhere and everywhere. And Palestinians are, I should say, exemplary in that they have kept their cause alive. Look at history, many people are eliminated, many people just die off quietly, right? That's what Israel and the British and the Americans have been counting on. The Palestinians have defeated them. They will not die off. They will not just walk into darkness and assimilate. They will fight for their deen and they will fight for their land. And that's something that's very encouraging. But what I want to say is that we should remember that many other Muslim causes are going that way, where people are losing hope. Kashmir is an example. I talk to people all the time from Kashmir. They don't know how to even talk about their issue to other people. They can't even represent themselves to other Muslims. And it's not for lack of suffering, but so that there's something to be learned from Palestine. That these people have refused to forget, and they refuse to let the world forget. That's a great victory. That's not easy. Many Kashmiris are in America, Kashmiris and Indians, two people I know very well. They are doctors, engineers, businessmen, millionaires. They will not be able to talk about what's going wrong with their country. Indians are some of the richest communities in America, Indian Muslims. Do you know that Indian Muslims, 200 Indian Muslims, are on the verge of genocide in India? That's 2 times the population of Turkey. If you look at their numbers of education and professional achievement and educational achievement and economic prosperity, their numbers are lower than the untouchables in India. They are the worst group in India. They ruled India, my people, I come from India, northern India, for 700 years. Today they are the worst. And the Indians who are rich and wealthy all over the world do not talk about that. They do not even know how to even give a khutbah about it, talk to Muslims, let alone non-Muslims. And that's a great shame. We have to learn to talk about that. The Pakistanis don't know how to defend Kashmir because this has not become not to other Muslims and let alone other non-Muslims. So that's something, again, that's something, I think that's a great story, success story for Palestinians. They have taught the world how not to let their cause be forgotten, even when all of the Arabs and all of the people that were supposed to help them have forgotten them and betrayed them. So again, this is a story in some ways of great success that we can all emulate. There's no, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this chance that Muslims today are increasing in number. We are connected and we are able to talk to each other and know about each other in an unprecedented way historically. Let's take advantage of that. We will be asked on the Day of Judgment. Wallahu a'lam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring our hearts together, our minds together, to bring the kalima of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala together in our hearts, to bring the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam together. May Allah make us among those who make our Prophet proud on the Day of Judgment. O Allah, bring our hearts, put the love for each other and solidarity with each other and in our hearts. O Allah, give us your nusrah, give us your victory. Allah, make us worthy of your victory, worthy of your acceptance. O Allah, we are broken in our hearts, in our minds. We are deficient in our iman. O Allah, complete what we are missing, because only you can complete. O Allah, allow us to love that which you love. O Allah, allow us to love those people that you love, those actions that you love. O Allah, make our iman more beloved to us than this life. Amen. O Allah, take away the fear of little things from our hearts so that it can be filled with the fear of you and your displeasure. O Allah, allow us to participate in the reward of the people of Gaza. O Allah, do not deprive us of their iman and their struggle and their jihad. O Allah, help our people in Kashmir, the Rohingya. O Allah, help our people in Western Turkestan. O Allah, help our people everywhere, those about whom we know and those about whom we do not know. O Allah, your ummah, the ummah of your Prophet, your beloved Prophet, alayhi salatu wassalam, whom you promised Al-Kawthar. O Allah, we witness, we testify that you have given his Prophet Al-Kawthar. You have given the increase, you have fulfilled your promise. O Allah, now also give us victory and give us solidarity and give us success on the Day of Judgment. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. جزاكم الله خير.